Hi friends, welcome to Educhums, your friend and guide on your journey of education. In this video, we shall read and understand a chapter named Kathmandu. This chapter in the NCERT book for grade 9 students has been taken as an excerpt from Vikram Seth's travel book named From Heaven Lake. Before we begin, please click the like and subscribe button to help us to help you. First, let's find out some basic background information about the author whose work we are going to learn about. Vikram Seth is an Indian poet and writer who is best known for his novels A Suitable Boy and The Golden Gate, and also for his travel-related work named From Heaven Lake. There's a movie made on The Suitable Boy as well, starring Tabu. Some of you might have seen it on OTT. He was born in the city of Joy, Kolkata, but he was raised partly in London and India. He studied in the highly reputed Oxford and Stanford universities. How many Indians can claim that? So friends, we are going to read the work of a highly educated, creative, and talented Indian, someone we should all be proud of. He shares his experiences of visiting the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu, in this chapter. The writer goes from China to India and visits Kathmandu and Tibet on the way. You can really enjoy reading this chapter because he creates vivid images in the reader's minds by mentioning descriptions and details of things he sees in two of Kathmandu's most famous religious sites, the Pashupatinath temple and the Bodhanath stupa. The traveler feels exhausted and homesick at the end of the trip. He is soothed by the musical strains of a flute, and he himself is surprised at the effect that flute music has on him. Now let us read the chapter and understand it. I get a cheap room in the center of town and sleep for hours. The next morning, with Mr. Shah's son and nephew, I visit the two temples in Kathmandu that are most sacred to Hindus and Buddhists. Friends, we can see how Vikram Seth has used the first-person narrative in this chapter. Now you may ask, what is the first-person narrative? When a speaker refers to himself or herself using pronouns like I or me, or even if he uses plural pronouns that include him like we or us, we say that the chapter is written using first-person narrative. This is the narrative style of the literary work. So we understand that the writer uses first-person narrative style in Kathmandu. Let us go on. Let us read the chapter further. At Pashupatinath, outside which a sign proclaims, "Entrance for the Hindus only," there is an atmosphere of febrile confusion. Priests, hawkers, devotees, tourists, cows, monkeys, pigeons, and dogs roam through the grounds. We offer a few flowers. There are so many worshippers that some people, trying to get the priest's attention, are elbowed aside by others pushing their way to the front. A princess of the Nepalese royal house appears. Everyone bows and makes way. By the main gate, a party of saffron-clad Westerners struggle for permission to enter. The policeman is not convinced that they are the Hindus. Only Hindus are allowed to enter the temple. A fight breaks out between two monkeys. One chases the other, who jumps onto a Shivalinga, then runs screaming around the temples and down to the river, the holy Bagmati, that flows below. A corpse is being cremated on its banks. Washerwomen are at their work and children bathe. From a balcony, a basket of flowers and leaves, old offerings now wilted, is dropped into the river. A small shrine half protrudes from the stone platform on the riverbank. When it emerges fully, the goddess inside will escape, and the evil period of the Kali Yuga will end on earth. After reading this, friends, let us understand the text. The writer, Vikram Seth, touches upon the theme of religious discrimination by mentioning the sign for Hindus only, seen outside the Pashupatinath temple. Comparatively, Buddhism is seen as a more inclusive religion that does not discriminate among people. It has a more calming ambience. As opposed to peace, he notices febrile confusion outside the Pashupatinath temple. The people elbow each other to get ahead. But respecting social status, they make way for the Nepalese princess. We can notice the religious fervor of Hindus as there are so many of them. Westerners wearing saffron clothes are not allowed entry inside the temple. And in the very next line, Vikram Seth writes about two monkeys fighting to convey the similarity between people discriminating on religious grounds and monkeys fighting among themselves. One of the monkeys jumps onto the Shivalinga. This shows how they don't follow or understand any religious protocols. This is a reference to how the ways of nature are quite different from the ways of humans. Let us talk about the line, a corpse is being cremated on its banks. Washerwomen are at their work and children bathe. In this line, we can see how practical life and Hindu rituals coexist almost seamlessly. Death is an accepted part of life, and people are not too moved or shaken by it. The line reflects an important cultural aspect. Another line is important. A small shrine half protrudes from the stone platform on the river bank. When it emerges fully, the goddess inside will escape, and the evil period of the Kali Yuga will end on earth. This line shares an important aspect of Hindu belief. According to Hinduism, the time we live in currently is Kali Yuga, or the time of the demon Kali, not the goddess. It is the worst of all the ages of the world and is marked by sin and conflict all around. Are you clear about what we have read till now? Now let us get back to reading the chapter further. At the Bodhanath Stupa, the Buddhist shrine of Kathmandu, there is, in contrast, a sense of stillness. Its immense white dome is ringed by a road. Small shops stand on its outer edge. Many of these are owned by Tibetan immigrants. Felt bags, Tibetan prints, and silver jewelry can be bought here. There are no crowds. This is a haven of quietness in the busy streets around. Friends, Vikram Seth's description of his experience at the Bodhanath Stupa is quite different from the one he had at Pashupatinath. It is marked by stillness, in contrast to the confusion and chaos witnessed earlier. There are no crowds, so he calls it a haven of quietness. The white dome is ringed by a road on which visitors walk and click photos. There are shops next to the temple from where one can buy things like Tibetan prints or silver jewelry. He then writes, Kathmandu is vivid, mercenary, religious, with small shrines to flower-adorned deities along the narrowest and busiest streets, with fruit sellers, flute sellers, hawkers of postcards, shops selling Western cosmetics, film rolls and chocolate, or copper utensils and Nepalese antiques. Film songs blare out from the radios. Car horns sound. Bicycle bells ring. Stray cows low questioningly at motorcycles. Vendors shout out their wares. I indulge myself mindlessly. Buy a bar of marzipan, a corn on the cob roasted in a charcoal brazier on the pavement, rubbed with salt, chili powder, and lemon. A couple of love story comics, and even a Reader's Digest. All this I wash down with Coca-Cola and a nauseating orange drink and feel much the better for it. Friends, observe how Vikram Seth has described everything so nicely and brings the images in front of the reader's mind's eyes. We can say that he uses the literary device of imagery by appealing to the five senses of the readers. He uses a descriptive style of writing, which is actually the best way a travel-related book should be written. The reader can actually imagine himself in Kathmandu just by reading the text. Let us read on to cover the rest of the chapter. I consider what route I should take back home. If I were propelled by the enthusiasm for travel per se, I would go by bus and train to Patna, then sail up the Ganges past Banaras to Allahabad, then up the Yamuna, past Agra to Delhi. But I am too exhausted and homesick. Today is the last day of August. Go home, I tell myself. Move directly towards home. I enter a Nepal Airlines office and buy a ticket for tomorrow's flight. I look at the flute seller standing in a corner of the square near the hotel. In his hand is a pole with an attachment at the top, from which 50 or 60 bansuris protrude in all directions, like the quills of a porcupine. They are of bamboo. There are crossed flutes and recorders. From time to time, he stands the pole on the ground, selects a flute, and plays for a few minutes. The sound rises clearly above the noise of the traffic and the hawkers' cries. He plays slowly, meditatively, without excessive display. He does not shout out his wares. Occasionally he makes a sale, but in a curiously offhanded way, as if this were incidental to his enterprise. Sometimes he breaks off playing to talk to the fruit seller. I imagine that this has been the pattern of his life for years. Friends, here we see Vikram Seth becoming a bit emotional. He feels homesick and tired. The word homesick means missing the home a lot. We see the description of a common sight in India, a flute seller with multiple flutes coming out of a stand. He compares this to an animal named porcupine, which has quills coming out of its body. See how a porcupine looks. This is a simile, as the writer has used the word like. The flute player is totally engaged in the simple act of playing the flute. He is cut off from the world almost like he is meditating. He is not money-minded. He is focused on the act of playing the flute. That gives his life meaning. He connects with another human being, the fruit seller. In an indirect way, Vikram Seth shows us how some poor people think and get through their lives. They take pleasure in their work and are social beings. They connect with each other. Money comes and goes. Not all of them focus much on it. Now, friends, let us read the last two paragraphs of the chapter. I find it difficult to tear myself away from the square. Flute music always does this to me. It is at once the most universal and most particular of sounds. There is no culture that does not have its flute. The reed ne, the recorder, the Japanese shakuhachi, the deep bansuri of Hindustani classical music, the clear or breathy flutes of South America, the high-pitched Chinese flutes. Each has its specific fingering and compass. It weaves its own associations. Yet to hear any flute is, it seems to me, to be drawn into the commonality of all mankind, to be moved by music closest in its phrases and sentences to the human voice. Its motive force too is living breath. It too needs to pause and breathe before it can go on. That I can be so affected by a few familiar phrases on the bansuri surprises me at first. For on the previous occasions that I have returned home after a long absence abroad, I've hardly noticed such details, and certainly have not invested them with the significance I now do. What a wonderful story and writing style. Let us understand what Vikram Seth is saying here. He's sharing the positive effect that flute music has on him. He talks about the commonality of human experience by saying that all cultures have some form or the other of flute music. Flutes use the human breath, and players need to pause in between to draw their breath and then continue playing. This is connected to the narrator's travel experience. He too wants to go home to take a breath before he can go on, as he is tired and homesick. He notices how he can observe things in detail now, how he has grown as a person, as he can invest his emotions in such observations. A beautifully written work. Reading Kathmandu is a wonderful experience. I'm sure you have understood the meaning of the chapter now. Click like and subscribe if you think this Educhums video was useful for you and you want to remain connected with us. Till the next video, it's ciao from Educhums.